monthly budget spreadsheet in Excel with dashboard. This is what we're going to create in today's video. So we're going to create here this cash flow spreadsheet where you guys can see how much is your income in each one of the months, the fixed expenses, the variable expenses, and of course the remain and the balance values. And moreover, we're going to create here this modern looking, this beautiful dashboard. And whenever you add, let's say, a new row with a new category of income or a new row, a new information of expenses, all the dashboard is going to automatically update for you. Maybe you're going to use this spreadsheet once a week or once a month, let's say. Every time you just update the spreadsheet, all the charts, all the dashboard is going to automatically update for you. So here we have the income by categories in percentage, and here we have the fixed expenses, the variable expenses, income by month, fixed expenses by month, variable expenses by month, and of course here we have this beautiful area chart where we can see the balance by month. So I hope you guys this video tutorial can help you out, and if you have any questions here in this tutorial, let me know, comment down below, and let's find out how can you create it step by step from scratch. Let's go. First, I want to start with the template spreadsheet itself, so our monthly budget spreadsheet, and then we can move on to the dashboard itself. Let me here in this first cell just type in the title of the spreadsheet, so monthly budget, for example, okay? Enter. And then here in the second row, I can type in all the months. I'm going to start here in the column B, B2, cell B2, and I'm going to start with the January month because it's the first month of the year. But I don't need to type it in manually all the months that we have. However, I can just select here the January, or you can type it in the normal way, January, or in a short way, a short form that just I'm doing here, I can select here the cell, click, hold, and drag to the right till you can see here the December. Okay, that way Excel is pretty smart, and when you just click, hold, and drag to the right, Excel just continues to insert months by month for you, okay? Now, one thing that I can do here is just select the first cell where I type just the title of my spreadsheet, and then I can click, hold, and select all the cells till the December month, okay? But just in the first row. And I can merge together all the cells. I can group, I can band together all the cells. So I can click here in the Home tab, and then I can go to this option right here, Merge and Center. Okay, we're done with the title. And here in this first row, in the second row, I can just type in, let's say, a dash, just to not let it empty. And now I can select the first row and the second one, where we just type in informations, and I can go here to the Home tab and centralize and merge everyone here, align everyone in the middle. I can put everyone here in bold. I can, let's say, paint the background with this dark gray or light black, and I can change the text color to this white that I have here. Okay, now we're done with our header of our spreadsheet. Now we can move on and create here the 3 blocks that we're gonna have, or 4 blocks. The first one is gonna be our income. The second one is gonna be the second, and the third one is gonna be the expenses, fixed and variable expenses. And the fourth block is going to be the remain value and the balance. Let's start here with the income. So income, I can press enter. And as we just did before, I can select all this first row where I just inserted the income. And I can go here to the Home tab and merge everyone together again. So I can click here and merge everyone together. And I can make sure I just centralize it. I can put it in bold, for example, and as it is my income, I can just paint it in a green color. Let's say this one right here. I can change the text color to a white color. And yeah, now with this first column that we have, I can type it in here, all the incomes that we have. So for example, paycheck. I know that a lot of people just have more than just one paycheck. So we can insert here paycheck first, and then paycheck second paycheck, and maybe you have a third one, here you just type it in all the incomes that you have. So another thing that maybe can be an income is a side hustle, and let's say other things. And then in the last row, I can add here a total to just add in all values, to add it up all values that we have before. So let's see here in this total row, I can equal sign, use a formula that is equal to the first value plus the second one, add to another one, and so on. But instead of doing it manually and using formula, I can use a function, equal sign, sum, double click it. And the benefit to use a sum function is, let's say you just need to insert here a new row. whenever you just insert a new row or you delete a row, you don't need to worry about, oh, if my function does not include this new row that I just add in my function, it's gonna automatically update for you, so don't need to worry, okay? Whenever you just add in a new row or delete a row, the sum function is gonna automatically update to include this new row that you just added in, okay? But if you use a formula, it's not gonna happen, so this is why using a function is much better. So equal sign sum function, and then I can select all these values that I'm gonna have here, close parentheses, and then enter. And whenever I add here a value for each category that I have for my income, so let's say my first paycheck is equal to 1500. My second one is 1000, let's say, enter. Okay, as you guys can see, the sum function is already updated for me. Side hustles can be, let's say, $300 and others $10. But let's say here I need to add another category, a new category. I can just click here, let's say in the row number 7, for example, right click, and then I go to insert. That way, I just insert a new row, and if you guys check here in the function, it's still selecting for me the correct range. So all this range, even though I just add here a new row, it's correct here in my function. Okay, the range is correct. So let's say here I have another paycheck. This is my 31. Close parentheses, enter, and here let's say $1,000 again. I'm gonna press enter, and as you guys can see here, my total is gonna automatically update. Enter. Okay. And whenever I just select the entire row, right click, delete, my sum function is already automatically updated for me. So this is the benefit to use a function instead of using formulas in Excel. And of course, you can just double click here in between the column A and column B, just to make sure I can resize the column A, for example. So instead of do it manually like this, I can just double click here, 1, 2, and that way the Excel smart web is gonna just increase the size of the column A or decrease the size, just to contain all the values that I have here. Now to just finish this income block that we're gonna have, I can select everyone here, so I can click here in my income cell. I can click, hold, and drag down to make sure I can select everyone here, and then I go to the Home tab, and then I can go here to Borders, click, and insert here, All Borders option. Okay, and of course I can just centralize everyone to make sure everyone is going to be just aligned in the center, horizontally and vertically in the cell. I can also just select all the values that we're going to use here, and instead of using values like this, I can change it and using accounting formatting. So for example, put it in dollar, let's say. So I can just click here to make sure I can format as dollar, for example. So I can click, and yeah, we're done. So all the values now is formatting as dollar. Of course, you can just increase or decrease the decimal number. So for example, $15,000 and 0 cents. So you have here this .00, but you can hide it if you want. So select everyone here, click in the Home tab, and then you can click here in the second option, decrease decimal. That way we have a short way of to display numbers here. I of course can click here where we just add our sum function. I can click here in the corner of the cell in this towel right corner. I can click, hold, and drag to the right. That way I make sure I just add in all this sum function for all the columns that we have. And of course I can change here the design of this last row where I have my total. So for example, I can select everyone here, and then I go to the Home tab, and then I can, let's say, paint the text with this white color, change it to bold, and instead of using a white background, I can change it to this dark gray here, for example. So the way is much more easier to see the total result that we're gonna have. Now to just build it in or fixed expenses and or variable expenses, instead of do it manually all over again, I can just select here, click in the income, click, hold, and drag down to make sure I can select everyone. Control C to copy, and then here in this cell we just skip the row number 10, okay? And in the cell here in the row number 11, I can just press Control V to copy and paste. And here, instead of using income, for example, we're gonna use here expenses or expense. But instead of using only expenses, I can change it and use here in the first text that I'm gonna use here. The first word is fixed expenses, for example. Okay, and instead of using green, of course, I can change to red or to orange, to yellow, or any other color that you wish. I'm going to select this one here, red, And let's change something here. So for example, I have rent. Let me delete these values. Delete. I have rent. I have, of course, a car payment, for example, enter insurance, and I also have gym, for example. And if I just need to include other values here, I can select, let's say, the row 16, right click, insert, and here I'm gonna type it in orders, for example. Okay, I can, of course, again, double click here in between the column A and column B, just to increase a little bit the column size, the column size. And then here for the rent, I'm gonna use 500 and 300 here, 10, 30, and here 15. Okay. Now we're done with the second block where we have our fixed expenses. Now we can move on and do the, let's say, the variable expenses. I can select all my fixed expenses again, okay, Control C, and then we skip the row 18, and in row 19 we can just press Control V to make sure we copy and paste, Control C, Control V, and instead of using fixed expenses, I'm going to change it to, let's say, variable expenses. And of course, instead of use red here, I can use orange or yellow. I'm gonna stick with this orange color. Yeah, I think it's good. Or yellow one. I think orange is better, in my opinion. Okay, but you can choose any color that you wish. Here I'm gonna have electricity view, for example. And I'm gonna pause here the video just to make sure it's not take too long to just type it in here all the values that I need. Alright guys, I just finished to type in here all the values, all the categories that I'm gonna use for my variable expenses. Just type it in here to the values that I'm gonna use. And now I can move on here, just skip one row, and then in the next row I can just type in remaining value and or balance value. So these two rows here is going to be just calculus, okay? It's going to be just a simple formula here. We don't need to use a function, but we're going to use a formula, okay? I can, of course, select everyone here, the entire row, and then I go to the Home tab, and I can make sure I centralize here everyone again, put in borders, change the colors to, let's say, this blue right here, and change also the text color to this white color, and put everyone here in bold. Okay. Let's start here with the first thing. The remain value is going to be my income minus my expenses. So here we're going to have three things to add in my formula. Equal sign. The first one is going to be, that is up here, my total income. Okay, my total income minus. I know it's difficult to read here because the blue color, but you can just check it in here by the formula bar. So equal sign, the cell where there contain the total income for the January month, okay, minus my expenses, my fixed expenses in the January month, minus my variable expenses, of course, in the January month too. So I select everyone here, enter, and this is my remain value. Now, instead of doing it manually all over again and to make sure all the columns here contain the same formula, I can just click here in the corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag to the right. That way I make sure all the rows, all the columns contain the same formula. One thing that I'm missing here is the reference of the columns. What I mean is, let's say, I don't know the column H stands for each one of the months. January, February, March, April, I don't know because I just lost the reference of my header. So maybe it's a good idea to just froze the header. And whenever you just, let's say, scroll down here, our spreadsheet, or in any place that we are in our spreadsheet, I can always see my header. How can I do it? It's pretty much simple. I just need to click here, just below, just in the cell below my header, because Excel, if you just select this cell right here, you can freeze, you can lock all the rows that is above, and of course all the columns that is to the left of the reference of the cell that we just select. Okay, so I'm going to stick here with this cell right here, cell A3, and then I'm going to click here in the view tab, and here in the freeze panes I'm going to select, let's say, this first option here. Okay, and yeah, now whenever I just scroll down here my spreadsheet, I can continue. I can also see, I can keep in seeing here my header, okay? So that way I'm not lost the reference of the columns. So I know that this column is January, and this value here represents March, this one right here represents May, and so on. Now we can move on here and make the formula of the balance. Here's a little bit different. So the first row, the first function, the first formula, let's say it's not a function, it's a formula. So the first formula that I'm going to add here is going to be equal to the remaining value. Okay, enter. And then the following columns that you're gonna have here is gonna be a different formula. So equal sign the previous balance plus the actual one. Okay, the actual remaining value. So it's gonna be like this. You know, you can follow here by the formula bar. So it's gonna be the previous balance add to the actual remaining value that we're gonna have. I'm gonna press enter. That way you can calculate the balance and we can see if our bank account is growing or not. So let me just click here, hold and drag to the right. That way I make sure all the columns contain the same formula. And as you guys can see, the balance here in all the columns is equal to each other because we do not have any cash flow, let's say in February, in March, in April, but if I just add in, if you guys just add in some income or some expenses values in the February, March, April, and so on, you're gonna see that your balance value is gonna just keep automatically update for you. And let me do it because now we can move on and create the dashboard itself. But before I create the dashboard, maybe it's a good idea to show you guys how this spreadsheet is gonna look like when it's complete. Let's say with all the columns, with all the months, just fill it in with values. But before I do it, just one thing that is missing here. In this last column, column N, let's say just after my December column, I want to add here another total. So equal sign and why should I just add in here another total formula? Because look, this total that we have right here in the rows is gonna be responsible to just add up all the values that we have here before. Okay, so it's gonna add up all the values that we have for each one of the categories for month. So this value here corresponds per month. But if I just add in here another total, it's gonna be per category. So we're gonna be able to see how much, let's say I just have an income for my first paycheck, and then how much I in total I'm gonna have for my side hustle or for my side job, So I can see either for my total of each one of the categories or for my total in each one of the months. Okay, so here a new total column is going to be equal sign sum function, double click it, 1 2, and then select all this first row right here. Okay, you can press enter, click, hold and drag down, and here just in this last row we have the total of the total. Okay, I can select everyone here and just using the same formatting. So Home tab, put everyone here in bold and everyone in white color, the font in white color, and change, let's say, to a gray color and just allow everyone in the middle. Okay, like this. And I just forgot here to insert borders. Yeah, I done. And of course, I can increase a little bit the size of the column N. Just click in between the column N and the column O. Click, hold, and drag to the right. Okay. Now, instead of doing it manually all over again, of course, I can just select this first total that I just did before. Control C, Control V here, Control V again. And here we can just click, hold and drag down to make sure all the rows contain the same function and contain the total. Click, hold and drag down here again. Yeah, we're done. So now we have a complete monthly budget spreadsheet. And before we move on to the dashboard, let me just double click here in the sheet number 1 or right click, rename, and then it's going to be my cash flow, for example. Or you can just put it in, insert a name as you wish, okay? Any name that you want. Cash flow. Now we're going to click here in this plus sign and in this new sheet, double click dashboard. So let's make more dashboard. Let's build it in our dashboard. And the first thing that I'm going to start here with is click here in the view tab and read it off this red line, these grid lines, because I don't want to see lines in between rows and between columns. I just want a more clean look here in my dashboard. So before we create our charts or dynamic charts here in Excel, I can click here in the Insert tab and just create the background where it's going to be all the charts. So Illustrations, Insert tab, Illustrations, Shapes, and then I can select, let's say, any form, any shape that I want to use here. So I can use a rectangle, a triangle. I'm going to stick with this option here, rectangle with rounded corners, okay? I can click here and just click, hold, and drag to create the area of this rectangle here. To make it more precise, I'm going to select this form here. I go to the shape format, and I'm going to use, let's say, 2 by 2.5, okay, the size. But you can use any size that you wish. I can click, hold, and drag to the left to just adjust the position. And this orange circle that I have here, I can click, hold in to make sure, click, hold, and drag inside to make it rounder, or drag outside to make it sharper. Okay, I'm gonna stick with like this, for example, a little bit round in the edges. Now I can select it, go to the shape format, shape outline. I can choose a black one, and shape fill. I can choose, let's say, a white color, but instead of using just a simple white color, I can go here to the gradient and choose, let's say, that option here. Look, and now instead of using this pattern, I can just go to the gradient again and click here, more gradients. That way I can make sure I can just adjust, I can customize my colors, the gradient itself. So instead of using, let's say, this stop here in the middle, instead of using with the brightness in 0, I can just change it to 45, for example. Enter. Or even, let's say, 50. And this one here to the left, I can increase the brightness to the 18.5 or 75. Let's say that way. Yeah, I think it's good. Now I can close this window here, and we almost done. Just before we finish here, I'm gonna select again. I go to the shape format, shape effects, shadow, and I'm gonna select here this first option. And again, shape effects, shadow. I'm gonna customize the shadow, so shadow options. And instead of using a transparency of 60%, I'm gonna use 35. The blur I'm gonna stick with 2, and distance I'm gonna stick with 4. And close it, and we done our first background here. To make sure we can create another background in a much faster way, I can just select this first background that I just add here, and instead of using Ctrl C, Ctrl V, okay, I know it's a good idea, but look at what you're gonna do here. I'm gonna select and hold, I'm gonna press and hold here in my keyboard 2 keys. Okay, the first one is the Ctrl key, and the second one is my Shift key. Ctrl and Shift key, I'm holding, and I'm gonna click here in my rectangular, click and drag to the right. Click, drag to the right, one more time like this, for example. And this one here in the middle, I can just select it, and with my arrow keys, just make it a little bit to the right, like this, for example. Yeah, now we have here our 3 rectangles, and then I can do it again, Control Shift to the right. This one right here, it's gonna be a little bit bigger, like this, for example. Control Shift down, Control Shift down again. For example here, Control Shift to the left. And this one here is gonna be a, let's say, a area chart, for example. Okay, that way. And all these 3 rectangles here to the right of the screen, I can select everyone. Select the first one, and then press and hold the Shift key, select this one here in the middle, and this one here down below. I can go here to the shape format, and instead of using 2 inches, I can use, let's say, 1.6 maybe, or 1.7, 1.8. 1.8, I think is good, okay? Now I'm gonna go with this here down below. I'm gonna click, and with my arrow keys, I'm gonna just bring it a little bit more down, like this, for example. And this one here that is in the middle, I'm gonna just make it a little bit higher, for example, like this. Okay, now we can just build it in our charts that we're gonna use. If you take a look here in our cash flow, there's many informations that we can use as charts, that we can create as chart. So for example, I can just using here in this first background done chart. Here I can also build a done chart, and here too. This one right here can be our income. Here can be our expenses, fixed expenses, and here are variable expenses, for example. And this large background that I have here, I can create an area chart where I can see all my balance, for example. I can see my balance. And here to the right, in this first one here, this first rectangular here to the right, I can create, let's say, a column chart to see all the categories that we have, or all the income that we have in each one of the months. Okay, so here is going to be my income. And here down below, I can just create to see the columns, column chart to see my expenses. And here, of course, down below, I can also see my expenses. But this first one here is going to be my variable, and this one right here is going to be fixed expenses, for example. But before we just build it in charts here, I think it's a good idea just to show here in this tutorial a more complete dashboard. So we're going to just fill it in here with values, all the months. But I know if you are in the January month, or if you just are making this spreadsheet now, of course, you do not have values for all the months yet. It's gonna come with the time. I know that, but just for a video, just for a tutorial purpose here, I'm gonna just fill it in with values all the months that I have here. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video and I come back soon. Okay, I just finished to fill it in here with values for all the months that I have, and as you guys can see here, now more precise, I can see that my balance is growing, so it's a good sign. It's because my bank account is growing, and I can also see that for all the months, so let's say here for the January, in February, March, so on, I can just keep in, I always have here a remain value in my account, my cash flow, okay, so I always have a remain value, so it's good, it's a good sign. Now we can move on and create our dashboard. The first information that I'm gonna need to use, that I want to use, for example, is how much I just have for income by each one of the categories that I have. So for example, I have here my income and I have the categories that is paycheck, paycheck number two, the first and the second, my side hustle, side job, and others type of incomes that I have. So I want to select everyone here. Okay, so select here this category and I go here to the right and I'm gonna press and hold the control key and I'm going to select all the total values, but I'm not select here this 34,000, okay? I just keep here, stick with the values that correspond to my categories. I'll not select the value that correspond here for the total row, okay? Now I can click here in the insert tab and insert, let's say here a chart that is a done chart, like this one. Click and okay. I can press here Ctrl X to cut the chart. I can back to the dashboard and Ctrl V. Now I can click here in the chart and just adjust it within the background that I have, like this, for example, and I can read it off a lot of information here. So for example, the title, or we can change it. So let's click here in the chart, for example, and instead of using a chart that is just above, I can select, let's say, the area of the chart, go here to the chart design. I can go to the add chart element. I can go here to the chart title and I can select this third option, centered overlay. That way I make sure my title does not just make a change in the size of my Dana chart. And of course I can select my title again, click, hold and drag here to the middle of my Dana chart, like this for example. Okay, and I can change the title, for example, income. Okay, let's adjust it again, like this. Okay, and instead of using legends like this, let's say here down below in the chart, I can select the area of the chart, click in the chart design, add chart element, chart legend. I can stick with this right option here. And one more thing here in the add chart element, data labels, I can choose to show, okay? The title, I can just click, hold, and drag here up, like this, for example. Or, of course, I can click here in the chart design, add chart element, chart title, and center it overlay. That way we can just make sure we just centralize the title. One more thing here, instead of using, let's say, actually values that we have, the total, the add up values, I want you to see the percentage, or I mean, how much this slice right here, this blue one, just representing the total, how much this orange slice here just representing the total in percentage. I want you to see the percentage, not the actual value. So I can, let's say, double click it and we can change. Instead of using values, I can select first the percentage and read it off the values, read it off the show lines, for example. Yes, we actually done here. And one more thing, let me just select here this done chart, and instead of using, let's say, a row size of 75, I can change it and use 55%. Yeah, maybe it's better. And one more thing, donut explosion, I can change to 3%, for example. I can go here to the effects options and stick with shadow. That is equal to 35 in transparency, 2 for blur, and 4 in distance. Okay, now we can close, and it's pretty much done. One more thing that we can change here, two more things. Double click again in the slices, the done chart. I'm gonna go here to the fill line, border, no line. Okay. That way we read it off that white border that we have here in our done chart. I can select the chart again and read it off the background. I go to the format tab, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, no fill. That way we read it off the background, and as you guys can see, now we can use the background that we just did before. I can select again, let's say the area, just the area here of our donut chart. And as you guys can see, here we have 4 circles in each one of the edges of the area. I can just click here in this first circle that we have, click, hold, and drag out, because that way we can increase the size of our donut chart. For example, like this. Okay, one more thing that we can do. The two more things, okay? Let me just select here the values, the percentage, home tab, put it in bold. I can paint it in black, or of course I can use white. I don't know, I think black is better. I can just increase to 12. And instead of using this or the other text like this gray color, I can just put everyone here in bold and use black, for example. Oh, let me just increase again the percentage numbers. 12, for example. Here the legend, I think is good, and yeah, we're done with the first chart. And whenever you just change any value, so for example, let's say now we have a new category. If I just add here a new category, my chart is going to automatically update for me. Let's check it out. So, for example, I have here my paycheck number 1, the second one, and let's say I start to have here a new income. That is my paycheck number 3, my third paycheck. In January, I just have paycheck 1 and 2. But February, March, and the following months, I'm going to have a third paycheck. So I can just click here in the row 7, for example, right click, insert, and I can just type it in here, my third paycheck. So let's say January is equal to 0, or here in February is like, I don't know, 5,000, for example. Okay, if you came back here to the dashboard, as you guys can see, now we have paycheck, the first one, second one, third one, side hustle, and orders. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 categories. But as you guys can see here, it's not displaying for me this paycheck, the third paycheck. Why this is happened? Because here in my total column, as you guys can see, that is empty. There's blank. There's nothing here inside within the cell. So how can I just insert a new row and make sure I can add automatically this function, the sum function? I can make the way I just did and go here, click, hold, and drag it out to make sure I just copy and paste the same function. I can do it, it's one option. And as you guys can see now, I have here the value, that is the green one for my paycheck number 3. Or, of course, let's say I'm gonna read it off this entire row here, so I can click, right click, delete, and I'm gonna do another thing here. I'm gonna select the whole column 7, Control C, Control plus. That way I just duplicate the entire row. And as you guys can see here, the functions is still working for me. And I can change it to, let's say, paycheck number 3. I can do so in 2 different ways, or maybe there's other options too. And as you guys can see, it's still gonna work for me, okay? Paycheck, the third one. And here, of course, I still have my slice that is correspond to my paycheck, the third one. And if I just delete it, select the entire row number 7, delete, as you guys can see here in the chart, it's gonna be removed too. Now let's move on and create my fixed expenses donut chart. But I don't want to create it all over again, come on. So we're gonna click here in the chart that we just did right now, and then I'm gonna press Control key and Shift key, click, hold, and drag to the right. That way I can just duplicate the chart without any problem, huh? And instead of using income here for the title, I can change it and use fixed expenses. Okay, and I can right click here in the chart, select the data option, and instead of using the values that we have for the first block, that is the income, and of course using the first category, we can change it. We can use the fixed expenses categories and values. So let me start here with, let's say, series 1. I'm gonna click add series name. I'm gonna just let it blank, and instead of using series values as these values that we have here for the income, I'm gonna change it. First, I'm gonna select everyone that we have here, delete, then I'm gonna select all the values right here. Okay, and then here for the horizontal category, I can click edit it, and I'm gonna select here everyone that I have for my fixed expenses. I'm gonna click OK, OK again, and as you guys can see, I already done with the chart. But just one thing that I can change here, instead of using values like let's say dollar, I can double click it, and I can change it to percentage and read it off the values. I can close this window here, and we're basically done. Just one thing, maybe it's not that right here, is the title, because as you guys can see here, I have a legend that is just overlapping with the title. So maybe it's not perfect that way. And I can just select the chart, let's say, the title of the chart, click, hold, and drag to the left like this. Okay, and I can do the same thing here for the income, just to make sure all these done charts look like another, no? I can just rise a little bit, and yeah, we're done with the second chart. And the third done chart that I'm gonna create here, Control Shift, roll, again, select the chart, Control Shift to the right, and here, instead of using, let's say, fixed expenses, I'm gonna use variable expenses, like this, for example. And right-click in the chart, select data, and for my horizontal category, I'm gonna click Edit, and I'm gonna use these categories that I have. Okay, okay again. Instead of using here values, I can double-click it and use, let's say, percentage, and read it off the values. That way, we are just done with the values here. And I can just change here the legend, let's say, because it's too large and it's almost not be displayed here in the area of the chart. I can select everyone, go to the Home tab, and decrease a little bit to, like, for example, 6 or 7. Okay, 7 is good. I can do the same thing here. Just decrease a little bit to 7. Now, guys, we can move on and create here our area chart to just display, to show all the values that we have in the balance. So here I'm gonna need to do something. Let's say I'm gonna click here in an empty cell. I'm gonna go to the Insert tab, and I'm gonna select here the line chart, but I'm gonna stick with this area. Okay. Now we're gonna let's make it down below here. Right click and select the data. The first option here, legend entries, I can click Add. Series name, I'm gonna let it in blank. Series value, I'm gonna just click here, and I'm gonna select, let's say, all the values that I have in the balance. So everyone that is here, for example, in this last row, down arrow, okay. And here for horizontal categories, I can click editing, and I can select all the months, January, February, March to December, for example. I can click in OK, OK again, and basically we're done with the chart. Of course, we can change the layout and the design of the chart, but it's still working here for me. Let me just click here in this chart, and I'm going to use a pattern that Excel already gives to us. So I'm going to click here in the chart design, down arrow, and I'm going to stick with this option right here, style 10. I think it's a good style. I can read it off the title. For example, we can just create it just after, delete. Now, instead of using this blue color, or let's say even instead of using this white color in my background, in my area chart, I can double click it, and I can change, let's say, so I can click here in this first option, fill align, borders, I can just select the fill option, gradient one, and I'm gonna stick here with, let's say, just two gradient stops, so I'm gonna click here to delete. This first one here, I'm gonna let it all to the left, and the second one here, I'm gonna stick all to the right, 100%. This one here to the right, I'm gonna change the color to, let's say, more colors, and I'm gonna create here my custom color, or I can just click here in standard, and I can select, let's say, this pink color, for example, like this one here or this one. Okay, and this one here to the left, I'm gonna choose the same color, but instead of using exactly the same color, I'm gonna increase here the transparency to 100%, and the brightness I'm gonna, of course, increase also to 100%. That way we can create this gradient effect. And let me just change here the angle, because instead of using the pink color here down below, I can use it, I need to use it here in the top of the chart. So instead of using here 90 as angle, I'm gonna change it to, let's say, 200 and 270, maybe 270. Okay. And one more thing here, I can click here in this gradient to the right, and I can change it and let in 80%, let's say that way, in the position 80%. Now I can close it, and I can Control X in the chart, go to the dashboard, Control V, and I can just make sure I can put it within here, the background. Okay, now I can read it off the background of this chart, so that way I can see the background that we just created before. So Format tab, Shape Outline, No Outline, Shape Fill, No Fill. And one more step here, instead of using this, let's say, white color for the text, I can select the entire chart, go to the Home tab, put everyone here in bold, and change the color to black. That way it's pretty much easy to see the values. And one more thing, let me double click again in the area of the chart, go here to the fill line, border, I can read it off the border, so no line. yeah, pretty much we done. And maybe we can change a little bit here the size just to adjust like this, a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left like this. Okay, now one thing that we can do here is just insert a title, for example. So I can go here to insert tab, text box, and here just here up to the left, I can just type it in, let's say balance by month. I can double click it to select everyone here, go to the home tab, centralize everyone here, put it in 12, the size, put it in bold, and just paint it in black, the font color. And I can read it off the background, so shape format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, no fill. And I can just adjust it a little bit like this, for example. Okay, we're done with our fourth chart here in Excel. Now we can create another one that is going to be, or let's say that is going to be here, here, and here. The first one is going to be my income per month by month. The second one, my expenses by month, and of course my fixed and my variable expenses per month. So it's pretty much easy to do. To make it in a faster way, I can do, let's say, select here all the months that I have, and then Control key and select all the total values. Okay, insert tab, and then I'm going to choose here the column chart. The first option, I can Control X in the chart, dashboard, Control V, and I can just adjust the chart just here in this first background that we have. Okay, now I can read it off the title. Yes, for sure. I can read it off this background lines. I can read it off these values here to the left. But as we just read it off the values here in the left, I don't know anymore how much this first column, is, how much this third one is. So I need to see, to compare, to know, even because I want to analyze the columns to see how much I just have in income for January, February, March. So I need to see the values of each one of the columns. That way, instead of using the values to the right, to the left here of my chart, I can just insert it above my columns. I'm going to do it. So select the chart, chart design, here to the left, chart element, and data labels. I can select, let's say, outside end, like this, for example. It's perfect. I can double click here in the column. Instead of using the gap width 290, I can decrease it to, I can lower it to 100 maybe. So 100, enter, and I think it's good. Or even lower, like 75, for example. Yeah, I can just use effect here, put it in a shadow, transparency 35, blur 2, and distance 4. And here in my fill, I can just use a gradient color and use a green one. So for example, this first option here, like this, for example, and in borders, I can of course stick with a gradient line, but I'm gonna use here this last green option here, okay? So I'm gonna stick with this design right here. And instead of using a width of 0.75, I'm gonna increase it to 1.5. I can close it and do basically done. Okay, so this is our income chart. And of course, I can select again all the area of my chart, go here to the home tab, put everyone here in bold, put everyone in black. And yeah, I think it's good now. And with my chart select, I can go to the format and read it off the background, the shape outline, and the background, of course. So it's going to be like this. So this is our chart for the income. And I, of course, can use this title that we just did before, Control C, Control V, and just click, hold, and drag here, for example. And this one, instead of using here balance by month, it's going to be the income by month. Now, instead of do it manually all over again for my fixed, let's say my fixed expenses and my variable expenses, so I can just duplicate here the income by month chart. I can select the chart, Control Shift down. That way I can duplicate the chart, and one more time Control Shift down again, like this. I can do the same thing here for the title, Control Shift down, and again Control Shift down, like this, for example. Okay, so this second one here is gonna be my fixed expenses by month. I can increase a little bit here, like this. Okay, and this one here is gonna be my variable expenses by month. I'm gonna insert it right here. And okay. Now, one thing that we just need to do is to change the data of these two last charts here. So right click in this one here in the middle, select data, and instead of using here, let's say these values right here, I just need to bring it down. So I can click here in the series one, double click it, or click here in edit it, cash flow. I'm gonna click here in this upper arrow, and I'm gonna select the values that I have here for my fixed expenses. Okay, click here down in this down arrow, okay again, and okay. That way you have here a totally new chart. You can decrease here a little bit the area of this chart, like this for example, and of course this one I can do the same thing, like this. Yeah, and this one right here, instead of using let's say blue color, I can double click it and I can stick with a red color. So I can go here to the fill and line, border, I'm gonna use gradient line. Because I do not have here red color, I can, let's say, stick here with a solid line and then select here this dark red option that we have. And in the fill, I can use a gradient fill. I can select, let's say, this yellow color here, but instead of using, or let's stick with, let's say, this gray here, and we're gonna change, instead of using gray, you can use red. So I can just change this color for red, this one also for red, and this one here also for red, for example. And this first one here to the right, I can increase the brightness. So let's say 44. This one here, this one to the left, I can decrease to minus 41, for example. And you're gonna have this effect here. I think it's good. And now just the last step here, two last steps here in border. Instead of using the width 0.75, I'm gonna use 1.5, and here in shadow, I can of course add here this first option in the shadow. I'm going to stick with 35 in transparency, 2 for blur, and 4 for distance. I can close it, and we're done with our fixed expenses by month chart. Now we can move on and create here our last chart here in our dashboard. So instead of using here a green color with this old data, I can just right click, select data, and then instead of using here the series one, I can click edit it, click here in this upper arrow, and we can change and select here these values where I have here my variable expenses like this, enter, okay, okay again, and let's just change here the colors. Let me just decrease here the area a little bit, double click it. I'm going to insert here shadow, for example, the first option as we just did before, transparency 34, 35, the blur is 2 and distance is 4, enter. And here I'm going to stick with orange, so the border I'm going to use a gradient color. I'm going to stick with this last option here for the orange color, and I'm going to use width in 1.5. And now in fill, I can change to gradient fill and choose, of course, this second option here for the orange color. Let's check it out how it's, yeah, I think it's good. Close it, and we're done. So whenever we just add new values to our monthly budget spreadsheet, as you guys just gonna update it maybe every month or every week, as you guys can see, all the values is gonna be automatically updated for you. Okay, so don't need to worry because all the functions that we just did here, all the formulas, the charts, is gonna of course automatically update for you. So I hope you guys this spreadsheet with this dashboard here in Excel can really help you in on your daily basis and can help you to just analyze your cash flow. How much is your income? How much is your expenses? Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions or suggestions to the next videos, just comment down below, let me know, and I see you tomorrow. As every day has a new video, I see you there.